3, 2, 1. What's going on, everyone? You're watching Ash on Comics. My name is Ash. Today's comic is Once and Future from Boom Studios. Look, it's by Kieron, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Gillen. Dan Mora, Tamara Bond villain. This is a book that I wasn't really too excited to read about, which is weird because I'm a massive Arthurian fan. I love Arthurian mythos. One of my favorite movies of all time is Excalibur. That is the definitive King Arthur movie. And I own the first, 5 issues of Die? I have not read them yet. I picked them up on Comixology on a massive sale because everyone was freaking out about how great Die is so great. So, hey, I'm open-minded. Joining me, as always, is Stan the Man. Stan, good to see you. And what you got for me today? Oh, man, you are a lifesaver. Not only am I'm thirsty, but I'm dragging ass. You know what that's like. Oh, man. That was good. That was really good. Ultra Paradise. Oh, that's where you are right now, buddy. Thanks. Thanks for thinking of me. We're always thinking about you. And joining me at... What? Forky. What's going on? He's relapsing, people. All right. We're going to have to deal with him later. And today... You thought I was forgetting about Candygate. I forgot about Comicsgate, but apparently it's still in the recesses of my mind. Candygate is not forgotten. There's basically 2 sides to Candygate: the Milkies and the Gummies. The Gummies represent all things like candy. Milkies represent all things milky. I do enjoy some chocolate candy bars once in a while, but Milky Way, it's just a trash candy bar. And you should never be subjected to eating it. If you want a good candy bar, this is one of the best that there is. Apparently it's by Reese's now. This was Hershey's for the longest time. But now Reese's is making it, and I like Reese's, right? So I'm going to eat this. I'm going to enjoy some good comics. I'm going to hang out with my friends here, and we'll get back. I'm kind of annoyed at these modern candy bars. Look at this. King size. This thing is $2. This is half the price of this comic right here. And it's 3 pieces. And then the normal Take 5 has 2 pieces. They used to be king size, you got double, right? You get the Reese's Pieces, you get 2 peanut butter cup, or Reese's Pieces. Reese's peanut butter cups, you get 2. You get the king size, you get 4. That's the way it goes. Should have had 4 of these. But they're damn tasty. Something about peanut butter, chocolate, pretzel, and caramel. I mean, it's just a perfect combination of 5 things in a candy bar. It's great. Right, Stan? Right. Right, Forky? There you go, buddy. Here's some trash for you. Look, you're not trash. Get out of here. That's not where you belong. There we go. Now, let's get on with the show. Once in the Future. Here is all the people that made this book. And here we start off in Cornwall, Great Britain. This hot summer may have been a disaster for Britain, but I have to admit, it's been a boon for us. We'd never have been able to excavate the lake bed without the drought. Yes, lucky. Can I see the find? We think it's 5th century, maybe 6th. Dun dun. It's a beautiful piece of work, astoundingly well preserved. Have you any ideas about it, Doctor? I do. I didn't think experts would come so quickly. Word spreads, I guess. And, Doctor, it's genuine. You didn't say your name. Sorry, we're so excited about this. I didn't think to ask. Which university are you with? Dun, dun, dun. What? Who are you? Put that down. You can't just take it. Oh. I think we can. What do you want? England back. There should have been a blam right here. Blam. I'll put that in there for you. Once in future. Okay, so King Arthur, story of the legendary king that no one knows if he was real or based on someone real or total myth or what have you. Doesn't really matter. I prefer the whole myth story. They did recently, like 20 years ago, I think, when they tried to do the whole King Arthur resurgence, they kept doing the whole, like, let's tie it into Roman history when the Roman... I guess I don't know. King Arthur was... The Excalibur, Merlin, these things aren't real. Quit trying to make it real. So, here we are, Somerset. Now, we get to old folks' home. We get this old granny lady. She's at home, and immediately we know there's something ado about her because they're talking about the news, and this one person's like, "Oh, that's the headlines. Turn over. We can catch Bake Off. Oh, I do like her pastry. She calls that pastry, and yes, Bake Off. Yes, dear, do change the channel if you really want. But broken fingers do take so long to heal at our age. I really wouldn't." And she's like rolling a cigarette. So we know something's up already. So they all decide to keep the news on. And then the nurse comes, says, your son's coming tomorrow, and she's like, I just want to smoke my cigarette and walk the garden and then, whatever. And then next, we turn to this guy, Bristol. I'm sorry, when I said whatever wine you like, I didn't mean cover me with it. That's someone you don't want to date. I realize you got your wine. I don't know the context, and we don't get the context. Apparently, this guy's a klutz, spilled his wine on a woman, and already I'm a little bit turned off with this book because it's so cliche in modern comics today. So cliche. That strong, tough, modern woman having to put up with the ineffectual beta male, and it's just, God, like just resting bitch face. And she's just trying to apologize, and she's like insulting him, like, oh, I didn't understand why you're single, but now I'm understanding. It's like, dude spilled a glass. Like, they started insulting him, and his grandmother's home is calling. And he's like, I'm sorry, I have to take this. And she's like, really? And of course, that's a no-no on a date. And then she's like, let me guess, something's come up. I just have to go. Climbing out the window when it's going this badly is so traditional. No need to fib. No, it's my grand's home. She's wandered off. And then finally, the woman's like, oh, I'm sorry. And then he gets another call, and it's his gran. And he takes the call, and she's out in the woods smoking a cigarette. She's just like, I ran away. And he's like, what? What's going on? She's like, I need your help. So he decides he's got to go. And says go, and the whole date thing was kind of pointless. And we see him now showing up in the woods. And this is another thing that kind of annoyed me about the book was the scene transitions. Excuse me, the monster is giving me the burps. She'll say here, like, get to your gran, you goof. And then we cut, and he's in the woods. And you'd think like this wouldn't be a big deal. Like that happens all the time, but it feels really rough. It doesn't feel like natural. I guess maybe I'm used to modern comics first setting the scene where you're cutting to, like meanwhile or later, and then have like a picture of where you are, and then next you have the character. You're just reading like, oh, okay, boom, boom, wait, where am I? What's going on? That slight pause in your brain. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but it takes you out of the story. You don't want that interference when you're reading. Now, she's like, over here, dear, just having some trouble. Everything is so much heavier now. And she's trying to lift this thing. And it's like, you don't have to, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. And he's like, how'd you get all the way out here? Uber, dear. All the way out here? Do you have any idea how much that costs? And then she's like, oh, but it's a free app. Ha ha, silly old people don't get apps. So he's helping her. He opens up the crate. What are you doing out here? And then we transition to the next page, and it's the Terminator 2 End of the World stash. And she's like, "Ah, good. Nothing's gone missing." And he's just like, "Oh, good girl." This anime face here. Or sorry, manga face. And then he's just like lifting up this thing. "Ooh, what the hell is this?" "Oh, put it down. We don't need it." "What's it for?" "Well, I used to hunt vampires." "You used to hunt vampires?" "Yes, I used to. Then I ran out of vampires." And of course, again, I'm starting to get a little annoyed. Partly, I'm getting annoyed by a pink sky. I'm like, why does the color palette of modern comics have to be so effeminate? It just, everything is shades of pink, teal, orange. Hey, look, that's all the colors in this. Pink, teal, orange hair. If you guys have never watched Fourth Age, RJ, he does a really cool video about how modern comics and the color palette has changed. And one of the reasons why is he points out is that these shades of colors women see more clearly, and oftentimes men can't see. Color blindness is more prominent in men. Also, men just don't normally see the color palette as vivid as typically women do. And then there's this whole deal about how, as a man, this might, if you are one of those men that's affected, this might look all muddy and ugly to you because your eyes aren't registering the colors the same way. And it's just all part of the whole scale to turn comics more female-oriented, but more importantly, anti-male-oriented. Under the guise of including women, we need more women in comics. What's really happening is just wanting to push men out of comics. And this, I'm not saying that this comic is really trying to do that. I don't have any hard and fast evidence. The problem is I've been so bombarded with this over years that now I see this and my mind immediately goes to that route. And I'm just like, oh. And it's annoying. This book itself is not social politics. It does have a little hints towards things. Like, this guy is pretty beta male guy. He's very metropolitan. He even makes a comment like how his grandmother came from Ireland when she was 15 and did all this stuff. And he's like, I was too intimidated to even get on a subway, or, just like, of course, he's a big softy. But that's not necessarily a terrible thing that could make for an effectual hero, perhaps. There's another example of where the scene transitions are kind of weird. She's like, Duncan, dear, listen to me. Do you know what the questing beast is? She's just like, Gran, you wouldn't even let me watch Scooby-Doo. Why the hell would I know whatever you're talking about? Well, you could keep secrets from me. People pick up the worst habits when they leave home. Anyway, do you know what the questing beast is? Now you do. And it's just like a weird, doesn't even give a chance to answer. There needs to be a beat in between these two. And it's a cool picture. I like the questing beast look. I like the design. There's like a big sack of dogs here. It's all barking. And he's just like, whoa! What would you have to? A little advice in this line of work. If in doubt, run. So, sorry for that interruption there. My phone vibrating. Run! So he's running. And then she's like, yes, most monsters go after movement. Keep him busy. Just like puts her grandson in the line of fire. Just like, go! So she sits there. This thing's chasing after him. Now, I have to put in the back of my mind that this is a comic book. But it's another thing that kind of bothers me is no way. Human beings are not fast. Right? This thing would catch Usain Bolt. Some dude. This wouldn't even be a contest. It'd be like 3 strides, boom, caught you, swallowed you. In comic books, though, we have this idea that people can outrun predatory beasts like this. But whatever. Duncan, lead it back here. So he leads it back. He's like, oh, great. He has to go through it. And it's just like, it's going to eat you. This guy would be anyone would be shitting their freaking pants right now. I thought the date was a low point of the evening. Okay, so he's running at the beast. picks up this log that's probably a couple 100 pounds. I was like, what? And then sticks it in its mouth, all in a superhuman effort. It's like, and of course he sits there and watches it as it slowly starts to crack and chew through it. And in typical cliched fashion, it breaks it. He darts through. The beast is like, oh, turn around. And he's running, and his grandmother's like, good boy, catch. Huh? And we get these blur lines, and this is sort of bothering me. In modern movies, there's a tendency for filmmakers to do shaky cam to simulate action. Paul Greengrass, who did the sequels to the two Bourne sequels, is a huge. He's way guilty of this. Why do this in comics? Like, you're simulating, blah, 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 and then rah, 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 comes the beast, and then he's like, rah, lines, I'm like, what's happening here? Is he moving? I don't know. And then it's just like, sss, and then you see the point, and he's like, and then, it starts to walk away. And you're like, what's going on here? No, let it go. Don't chase it. It's a sad little story. Poor thing. And then he's just like, but if you start chasing it, you'll just get obsessed, blah, blah, blah. So he's just like, what the hell's going on? It's real. And you said this stuff was nonsense. You're just like, oh, of course. There's all sorts of things that are real that are nonsense. You're just like, crazy old lady. And she starts to explain what matters is what it means. And they eventually get to the point where it's about the scabbard and that we saw earlier, and she has to pull a gun on her grandson to get him to do it. And he's like, Gran, you raised me. You're not going to shoot. And of course, in typical fashion, because this is kind of cliche writing, we know exactly what's going to happen. In an effort to subvert expectations, we're going to exactly get what we expect. And I expect, because normally she shouldn't shoot her grandson, but that would be too right. We have to subvert the expectations. So I immediately know, yep, she shoots him. You shot me. I was trying to give you a close shave, but fingers aren't as steady as they used to be. Age comes to us all. What? And then she's like, gunpoint getting him to the car. This is a loving grandson who came out, dropped everything to help her. Now she's like, got a gun. I don't understand. And then she talks about the sword and how the scabbard, and like she wonders why the sword gets all the fame and glory when it's the scabbard that actually has, the really good power, which is keeps you from dying and it heals all wounds. And then he's like, oh, what's the sword called? She's like, I had no idea you knew all this stuff. What's the sword called? Oh, Excalibur. That was another one of those beats. And that didn't, Excalibur. Excalibur. It just, there should have been a pause between I don't know. It just, some of the dialogue just didn't feel right. And then he's like, Excalibur? As in Excalibur? Excalibur, 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 Excalibur? You're repeating yourself. Take a deep breath. You always were a blurter. King Arthur's sword, Excalibur. No. Oh, thank God. It's not Arthur's sword. It's one of the Ladies of the Lake's sword. They loaned it to Arthur. But if someone has Arthur's scabbard, I think they'll be trying to bring him back. And he's like, but Arthur, isn't he a good guy? Oh, you adorable little boy. Of course, we got to subvert expectations. And we see the little cult. Arthur united the Britons beat back the invading foreigners. And then the bit people always forget about. He went to war with the European Empire and crushed it. He said to return in Britain's darkest hour. Then we see the cult. And he's like, but there's something about that prophecy that always rubbed me the wrong way. Never trust a prophecy that can be taken in two ways. What do they mean by that? Well, he could return because it's Britain's darkest hour, sure. Or he could return to cause it. Dun, dun, dun. To be continued. Here we get some future releases. Now, this is not a bad book by any means. The art itself, from an illustrative point, is okay especially for an indie book. This is better than most Marvel comics. So that, damn alarms interrupting. This has been a real professional episode. Thank you for bearing with me. What was I saying? Oh yeah, this book, it's a quality book. Well, it's a decent book, especially for an indie. For $3.99, I think you're getting some value. I think you're getting an interesting take. I like interesting spins on things you think you know. Like I said, I'm a big Arthurian lore. You know, I love the story of King Arthur very much. So this lends itself well to me. I'm like, oh, you're using these myths and things and you're repurposing them for different stories. I'm kind of interested. I'm not necessarily interested in the idea of Arthur coming back as this big bad guy. It's like spinning that trope on its head, but maybe. I don't think I liked this book well enough to recommend it. It's difficult for me. I'm floating between like a 3 and a 4. The artist, like I said, what illustrates where you can see the pictures look fine. I do and I don't like the coloring. When the coloring is not all this shade of pink and teal, I do like some of the vivid parts in other books or other panels. I like this page at the end. Whatever. The color, it's decent. Who cares about the colorists? And Bond Villain's just a terrible person anyway. So, I don't know. I enjoyed the book, but I'm not necessarily clamoring for more. And I think the problem was I went in with high expectations because everyone was like, oh my God, it's Kieron Gillen and the person that did Die, and it's even better than Die. And I'm like, oh. And then I read it and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of amateurness in some of the writing. It's a decent story. I feel like I could have used the editor to tighten things down. The story itself is interesting. The scripting is weak, and then the sequential art storytelling, like I said, has some weird beats missing. I think that's part of the fault of the script. It feels like an indie book. So I'm gonna say, man, what do you think, Stan? Yeah, I think so. 3 stars. Forky says it's not trash. Not quite good enough to recommend. 4 is like when I recommend the book. 3 means it's a solid read, and you might actually like it better than me based on your subjective tastes. So don't by any means take this as like, oh, you failed to give it 4 or 5 stars, so you're looking down at it. No, 3 means it's not bad. It's just doing what it should do. And so I'm glad I read it. I don't know if I'm going to continue reading it. And that's all I can really say. Hopefully you got a good feel of what this is about. And if this was something for you, put your comments below, like, subscribe, and do all that good stuff if you wouldn't mind. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.